You've been following others your entire life, haven't you? Parents, teachers, friends, influencers. A parade of external voices drowning out the only one that matters. Your own. And it terrifies you to think about what happens when you finally tune them out. The silence, the responsibility, the unbearable weight of your own freedom staring back at you. That's why you're watching this right now, seeking yet another voice to guide you, to tell you what to think. You're addicted to the comfort of intellectual submission, and you know it. Nietzsche saw through you before you were even born. He recognized this pathetic tendency in human nature, this desperate need to kneel before idols of our own creation. Follow no one, he would say with a contempt so pure it could slice through the steel bars of conventional morality. But you don't really want to hear that message, do you? It's too frightening, too demanding. You'd rather consume and regurgitate the thoughts of others, pretending they're your own, while your authentic self withers away, unused, unexplored, unseen. The greatest lie ever sold to humanity is that wisdom comes from outside yourself, that salvation, meaning, and purpose can be downloaded from external sources, books, leaders, philosophies, religions. But Nietzsche recognized this for what it truly is, a form of spiritual laziness, a cowardly retreat from the terror of true self-authorship. The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe, he wrote. And the tribe wants nothing more than your unconditional surrender, your willing subordination to its values. Do you really understand what following others cost you? Every time you nod along to someone else's truth, you sacrifice a piece of your potential. Every time you accept another's interpretation without questioning, you carve away at your intellectual sovereignty. This isn't just philosophical posturing. It's the difference between a life that belongs to you and one that's merely borrowed, between creating your existence and renting it. Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch, the overman or superman, isn't about physical strength or domination of others. It's about the strength to stand alone in your thinking, to bear the terrible burden of creating values rather than inheriting them. What is great in man is that he is a bridge and not an end, Nietzsche tells us. But a bridge to what? To nothing less than your own becoming, your own overcoming. And you cannot cross that bridge by following footsteps laid down by others. Look around you. The world is filled with followers disguised as leaders, with sheep wearing wolves' clothing. They've mastered the language of independence while practicing the art of conformity. They speak of disruption while reinforcing the status quo. They preach individuality while enforcing groupthink. And worst of all, they've convinced you that regurgitating their ideas makes you somehow enlightened, somehow free. You've been trained since childhood to value external validation over internal conviction, to seek approval rather than authenticity, to judge your thoughts by how well they align with authority rather than how truly they reflect your experience. This isn't education, it's domestication. It's the systematic destruction of your intellectual sovereignty, replaced with a pathetic gratitude for the chains that bind you to conventional thinking. Nietzsche understood that true freedom begins with a form of philosophical destruction. You must first destroy the idols you worship, the thinkers, leaders, and systems that you've allowed to colonize your mind. I say unto you, one must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. That chaos isn't comfortable. It isn't safe. It's the disorienting vertigo of standing on your own intellectual ground for the first time, with no external reference points to guide you. The history of human thought is littered with the corpses of those who followed blindly, who accepted the prevailing wisdom of their time without question, who confused obedience with virtue. The church followed scripture and burned heretics. Nations followed leaders and marched into genocidal wars. Scientists followed consensus and resisted paradigm shifts that later proved revolutionary. The path of the follower is the path of complicity in humanity's darkest chapters. God is dead, Nietzsche proclaimed, not as a metaphysical claim, but as a cultural diagnosis. The traditional moral frameworks, those comforting external authorities, had lost their power to command belief. but he saw with perfect clarity what would come next. Rather than embracing the freedom this death offered, people would simply find new gods to follow, new authorities to obey, new systems to surrender to. The death of God didn't lead to true independence, but to new forms of intellectual submission, to science, to politics, to celebrity, to the mob. And here you are, still searching for someone to follow, still desperate for the comfort of certainty that comes from deferring to another's judgment. Pathetic, predictable, precisely what Nietzsche warned against. Think for a moment about your most cherished beliefs, your political views, your moral principles, your sense of purpose. How many of these are truly yours? How many have you subjected to ruthless, independent scrutiny? How many could you defend without appealing to the authority of others? I suspect very few. The uncomfortable truth is that most of what you consider your thinking is merely the echo of voices you've chosen to amplify: parents, teachers, authors, leaders, the zeitgeist itself. You are less an independent thinker than a sophisticated parrot. Nietzsche's demand that you follow no one isn't a call for stubborn ignorance or the rejection of learning. It's not anti-intellectual. It's the highest form of intellectual commitment. To engage with great thinkers not as disciples but as equals. To approach their ideas not as scripture but as raw material for your own philosophical construction. To read Nietzsche himself not as an authority to be obeyed, but as a provocateur to be wrestled with, challenged, overcome. The surest way to corrupt a youth is to instruct him to hold in higher esteem those who think alike than those who think differently. This warning from Nietzsche cuts to the heart of our educational and cultural systems, which reward conformity disguised as critical thinking. True independence isn't joining the right intellectual tribe. It's questioning the very concept of intellectual tribalism. It's recognizing that agreement should never be the goal of thought. The will to power that Nietzsche describes isn't about dominating others. It's about mastering yourself, about imposing form on the chaos of your existence rather than accepting the form imposed by others, about creating values rather than consuming them. This is the ultimate act of self-assertion, and it cannot be accomplished by following anyone, no matter how brilliant, how charismatic, how seemingly aligned with your existing views. Do you have the courage for this? The courage to stand naked in the cosmos, stripped of the comfortable clothing of borrowed thought. The courage to say, "I don't know," rather than regurgitating someone else's certainty. The courage to be wrong on your own terms rather than right on someone else's. Few do. Most will retreat to the warm embrace of intellectual conformity, to the false security of following those who speak with conviction. You think you understand Nietzsche because you've read his books or watched videos about him. But understanding isn't the same as embodying. It's easy to nod along to his ideas, to quote him at dinner parties, to feel the momentary thrill of his intellectual radicalism. It's far harder to live as he prescribed, to subject everything, including his own teachings, to the merciless scrutiny of your independent judgment, to follow no one, not even Nietzsche himself. He who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster. The monster in this case is the comforting certainty of external authority, the seductive promise that someone else, a philosopher, a leader, a system, can do your thinking for you, that you can outsource the terrifying responsibility of creating meaning, that you can find truth outside yourself rather than constructing it through the labor of your own thought. The tragic irony is that Nietzsche himself has become precisely what he warned against: an idol to be worshipped, an authority to be followed. His words are quoted like scripture, his insights treated as revealed wisdom rather than provocations to independent thought. The philosopher who demanded you follow no one has been transformed into yet another one to follow, and in doing so, his most essential teaching has been betrayed. What would it actually mean to take Nietzsche seriously? To truly follow no one? It would mean approaching every idea, including those in this very video, with profound skepticism. It would mean developing the intellectual courage to stand alone, to think against the current, to risk being wrong rather than safely repeating what others have said. It would mean embracing the vertigo of creating your own values in a world that desperately wants to impose its values upon you. This isn't about intellectual arrogance or dismissing the insights of great thinkers. It's about transforming your relationship to those insights, approaching them not as a follower, a disciple, a believer, but as a sovereign mind engaged in the project of self-creation. It's about using ideas rather than being used by them. About reading philosophers not to find answers, but to sharpen your questions. The herd instinct runs deep in human psychology. We are social creatures, evolved to seek consensus, to fear exclusion, to value belonging over truth. Overcoming this instinct requires a violence against your own nature, a rebellion against your biological and cultural programming. This is the self-overcoming that Nietzsche speaks of, and it is neither natural nor easy. It demands a ruthlessness toward your own intellectual comforts, a willingness to stand alone rather than surrender to the warm embrace of collective thought. You must be ready to burn yourself in your own flame, Nietzsche tells us. How could you rise anew if you have not first become ashes? The flame is the destructive power of truly independent thought, burning away the comfortable certainties, the borrowed convictions, the second-hand truths that you've mistaken for your own. The ashes are what remains when you've subjected everything, even your most cherished beliefs, to the merciless scrutiny of your own judgment. And the rising anew is the emergence of genuine intellectual sovereignty, the birth of a self no longer defined by its adherence to external authorities. True intellectual independence is invisible to those who lack it. They mistake it for contrarianism, for stubbornness, for arrogance, for the very tribalism it rejects. They cannot comprehend a mind that follows no one because their own minds have never experienced the terrifying freedom of genuine self-authorship. They see only another position to be adopted or rejected, another authority to be followed or opposed, not understanding that the truly independent thinker has stepped outside this binary entirely. The price of following no one is isolation. Not physical isolation necessarily, but the existential isolation of thinking thoughts that may find no immediate recognition, no ready-made audience, no pre-existing tribe. It is the fate of all creators to be misunderstood, Nietzsche recognized. And yet he saw this misunderstanding not as a failure, but as confirmation. Evidence that one has truly broken free from the gravitational pull of conventional thought. So where does this leave you? With a choice. You can continue as you have been, consuming ideas rather than creating them, following thinkers rather than engaging with them, mistaking agreement for understanding. You can remain comfortable in your intellectual submission, in the false security of borrowed certainty. Or you can embrace the vertigo of true independence. You can subject everything, including this very message, to the ruthless scrutiny of your own judgment. You can follow no one, not even Nietzsche, not even me. The choice seems simple, but few will make it. The pull of the herd is strong. The comfort of conformity is seductive. The terror of intellectual solitude is real. But for those with the courage to choose independence, Nietzsche offers not a destination but a direction. Not an answer but a question. Not a path to follow but an invitation to forge your own. True power is invisible. True independence goes unrecognized. True creation requires destruction. First and foremost, the destruction of your attachment to external authority. Follow no one isn't just Nietzsche's challenge to you. It's his challenge to himself, to all thinkers who dare to claim the mantle of genuine intellectual sovereignty. Will you accept this challenge? Will you face the abyss of your own freedom? Or will you retreat once again to the false comfort of following others? The choice isn't just philosophical, it's existential. It defines not just what you think, but who you are. Choose carefully. The abyss is watching. If this stirred something inside of you, subscribe and ring that bell, because this journey down the rabbit hole is only beginning. And in the comments, leave me this: I follow no one. That's how I'll know you're here, part of this quiet army of strategists, thinkers, and shadow weavers. Until next time.